Hello friends, this is Carrie and welcome back to I Like Reddit channel. Today we have 3 stories out of the Entitled Parents subreddit. Let's begin. Our first story is by Private Blythe. EM leaves child on my doorstep. I work at a preschool and sometimes babysit kids from work, especially when they're on break. Because of the Voldemort virus, we were canceled. Because my sister has a disability and is immunocompromised, my family agreed to go into self-isolation. Thankfully, most of us can work from home. We would limit our contact with all others, even other family members, to protect my sister. I was playing outside in the driveway with my brothers when a familiar car pulled up and one of the little girls, let's call her Susie, from the preschool gets out of the car. I have babysat this girl many times before, but never agreed on this occasion. I assumed that the mother was going to ask me to watch her, but when I approached the car, she sped off, leaving poor Susie there. I had not made any previous arrangements to watch her and didn't want to let her into the house, knowing that her father is a frequent flyer and Susie may be a carrier. I got her some water and let her sit down in the garage to get out of the wind, as I tried to call her mom and dad. Neither picked up at first until I finally got a hold of a very angry mom. I explained I couldn't watch Susie and she would need to come back to pick her up. The mom freaked out and said that she was already at work. This is a total lie. She works at the mall, and I know for a fact the mall is closed because of the Voldemort virus. I tell her that if she doesn't return within half an hour, how far it is from the mall to my house, I would be calling CPS. She knows we are mandatory reporters because we already have an open case on her. She explains she can't, but she says that she'll send her husband. 15 minutes pass, then 30. I get Susie some chalk to color with while maintaining a distance, but trying to keep her happy. An hour later, I know that no one is coming to get her. I phone CPS and the non-emergency police line. The police arrive at my house in a couple of minutes, and I explain to them the whole situation. Thankfully, a CPS worker is able to get there pretty quickly. The mom phones me later and yells at me for Susie being taken by CPS and them having another investigation, saying I always watch Susie during the break. I explained that my immunocompromised sister, and she is very offended that I even suggested that Susie might be sick. I didn't even bother to explain how she could be a carrier without showing symptoms. The EM claims she won't be returning Susie to our preschool because of my appalling and disrespectful behavior. But I know that she has been kicked out of all the other preschools. I wouldn't mind if the entitled mom never came back, but I would certainly feel bad for little Susie. I'll try and remember to update this post when school is back in session. Stay safe and healthy, y'all. A few things. The reason the virus got called the Voldemort virus because YouTube has been cracking down on people who use the C virus in any of their videos. The other thing is, it's appalling that this woman would abandon her kid outside of someone's house without making prior arrangements with them for babysitting, especially in a crisis time like this. I mean, did she ever consider that someone might not be able to watch her kid? And then she has the nerve to get angry because they actually called the police and CPS on her. But this seems like it's a normal occurrence for this woman to basically have zero regard for anybody else. And I'm glad she got in trouble with the police. Anyway, moving on to our next story. If you've been watching until here and are enjoying the video so far, please put some heart emojis in the comment section down below. Our next story is posted by Bad Alice 13. Hit in the face for having the audacity to ask a parent to control their child. I was talking to an old friend I hadn't heard from in ages, and they brought up this story, so I thought I'd share it. I used to work at Dillard's in the children's department, so I saw my fair share of entitled behavior from our customers, but this incident happened to my coworker. A customer was browsing around with her 4 to 5-year-old son. He was running around, knocking things off racks, etc. The mother made no effort to control him until he crashed into her a couple of times. She told him to go sit on one of the chairs by the dressing rooms. The chairs were pretty nice and upholstered in a silk-like fabric. My coworker was removing garments left in the changing room as she passed by this little boy. She noticed he was pushing a small car, I think it was a Matchbox style car, all over the back of the chair, and it was shredding the fabric. She spoke to the boy and asked him if he could not do that. He responded by blowing a raspberry at her and pushing the car with even more force. She went to the mother and said, "Your son is destroying the chair with his little car. Could you speak to him?" Which is a nicer way than I would have put it. The mother stopped and stared at my coworker. They stood there just looking looking at each other for my coworker described as too long and very awkward. Finally, the mother asked, "Sal?" My coworker stared, saying, "Well, could you?" And before she could finish the sentence, the mother slapped her across the face with the hanger she was holding, so hard it broke a hanger. Now, I would have beaten the crap out of this lady, then and there, job be damned. My coworker just turned around and went to find the manager. She first encountered an off-duty police officer who works security in the store, and is a close friend of mine, and told him what had happened. He went with her to the manager. The manager went over to the mother, listened to her rant, apologized to her for misunderstanding, gave her a 10% discount for her troubles. My coworker was so stunned she couldn't even speak. Even the cop was like, "What the heck just happened?" The cop turned to my coworker and asked if she wanted to press charges. Before she could answer, the manager interrupted, saying, "That wouldn't be necessary." Meanwhile, all the other employees in the department are watching all of this going down, and I just walked back in for my break to see my coworker had a huge welt across her face and bleeding under her eye. My coworker told the cop that she in fact wanted to press charges. The manager told her she couldn't do that if she wanted to keep her job. She told him that was fine. She quit. The manager was still insistent that the mother not be troubled by all of this. The cop said she could have put her eye out, and I'm arresting her, and if you don't like it, you can take it up with my commander. The entitled mother was still acting smug until she saw the cuffs. Then she started screaming the usual nonsense. "I'm gonna sue you all. I'll have your badge. Do you know who I am?" etc. Nobody but the manager cared, and she still went to jail. All of the other employees and customers who were watching clapped as she was led out of the store in handcuffs. The manager started in on the employees about how to correctly deal with situations like the one that just had happened. We all looked at each other, and without a word, we all clocked out and left. All of us. Good luck running the entire department by yourself, jerk. We hung around our injured coworker until she was done with the police report, and then took her to lunch. She said that she had been planning to apply to a different store in the same mall anyway, but hadn't planned on quitting the way it happened, and was worried that Dillard's would give her a bad reference now. We convinced her to go to the other store right then, injured face and all. She explained what happened to the manager there. She was hired on the spot, and they told her they don't put up with crap like that. If a customer hits you, no matter who they think they are, charges are filed and will be perma-banned from their store. I spoke to my cop friend a few days later, and he said the crazy woman nearly drove him insane with screaming and threats on the way to jail, which wasn't close. After she saw it wasn't working, she started pleading and bribery. He said he didn't think he'd ever been so glad to hand off someone to booking. All this happened ages ago. Since that day, I've never stepped foot into Dillard's. Screw them. If I was OP, I would have went one step further, and I would have also reported that manager to the higher-ups at Dillard's, and maybe even reported this to the media, because this is absolutely inexcusable. For a manager to take the side of an abusive customer over that of his employees is cowardly, and it's despicable. I'd never heard of this store, but if that's the way they treat their employees, then I will never step foot in their store, ever. Anyway, on to our final story. Our final story today is by PW Crash. Entitled Mom calls the cops on me for trespassing on my own land. Gets evicted. Cast: me, duh, EM, entitled Cow, Frank, unlucky neighbor, previously UN, before the edit, the owner of EM's house and the father of EM's baby daddy, grandfather, an 83-year-old farmer who takes no crap, Cops 1, 2, and 3. Backstory. For most of my life, I was raised by my grandfather. Nothing was wrong with my family or anything, just a few set of circumstances. That's a whole other story in itself. We live in a suburban area surrounded by woods, and he owns about 10 acres into the woods, with boundaries clearly marked by a stone wall. One of these stone walls separated my grandfather's land from a cul-de-sac, and up until now, we've had zero problems with any of them. In fact, my grandfather was usually more than happy to give permission to neighbors who politely asked to use the land, given that they had a good reason. One of these neighbors had asked my grandfather if he could dump sticks and leaves in his yard over the stone wall. My grandfather agreed, as he rarely used that part of the property anyway. This will be important later. My grandfather is still very healthy for his age, and still as strong as an ox. That being said, he has a few minor health issues, including vertigo spells, so I've been trying to help him around the yard more and more, as well as just stay active outside away from the crowds with this virus going around. Recently, I've started the project of cleaning up the underbrush around the wooded area. A large pine had fallen a few months before, almost hit one of the porches in the cul-de-sac. My grandfather cut up the tree and removed the pieces in the neighbor's yard, but it was still too deep in the woods to pull them out with a tractor. This led me going back to the pine tree and trying to clear a path back to the house from there. I was behind the stone wall, cutting and pulling up saplings, when I hear the glass door of the cul-de-sac house open up and an angry lady storming out onto the porch in her bathrobe. She was much younger than the typical Karen. I would say mid-20s.
EM. What are you doing? You can't be here.
Me. Why not?
EM. Because you're trespassing, idiot. You think you can just hang out in the woods behind my house with my kids inside? Get the hell out of here before I call the cops.
At this point, I'm just looking at her trying to figure out what to say. I mean, I get it. It can be a little weird seeing someone in the woods behind your house if you haven't seen them before. Me. Ma'am, I'm sorry if I scared you, but my family owns this part of the woods. I'm just cleaning up back here. Remember me and my grandfather were back here a few months ago to take care of the tree that fell down? I just need to clear a path so that we can get it out of here. At this point, I thought it was purely a misunderstanding.
EM. Don't be ridiculous. Those were laborers my boyfriend's dad hired. You don't own this land. My boyfriend's dad owns all this.
Gestures with her hand.
Now, I'll tell you one more time to get out before I call the cops.
Now, I'm thinking I might be dealing with a genuine idiot, as outside our property boundaries, the woods are owned by the town's water plant and don't have public access. But I'm also taken aback that she referred to us as laborers. Me. I guess you're gonna have to call the cops then, because I'm not leaving. I don't care what you, your boyfriend, or your boyfriend's dad says. I shrug as I lean back against the wall and pull out my phone and call my grandfather to tell him where I was. He tells me he'll be there in a few minutes, so hang tight. She dramatically proceeds to call 911 and tells them that there's a shady individual on her property refusing to leave and she's afraid for her life. I start getting nervous at this point, even though all I have on me is a hooked branch cutter, so I call up the police non-emergency number and briefly explain the situation as it's just a land dispute that just got out of hand and that I'm unarmed and waiting on my property and that I have never left my own property. He assured me it would be settled when the officers arrived, which didn't help my nerves. Just then I hear my grandfather pull up and see him walking through the yard towards us.
EM. What? Stay back. You can't come in my yard.
Grandfather growls. Keep your mouth shut, you dumb broad. He growled as he walked over to me and climbed over the wall so he was on my side. Grandfather. Now who the hell do you think you are and why are you yelling at my granddaughter?
EM. My boyfriend's dad owns all of this. Both of you are going to get arrested for trespassing.
My grandfather let out a dramatic, indignant laugh. Grandfather. Oh, did he tell you that? Well, you're in for quite a shock, and your boyfriend's dad is in for quite a talk. After them yelling back and forth for a few minutes, 2 cop cars pull up and 3 police officers come walking into the yard. As soon as they do, she starts screaming again about how we have no right to be in the woods behind her house where we can see her kids inside. Cop 1 looks at grandfather. Sir, do you own the property behind the wall? Grandfather. Yes, sir, I do. Pulls out his wallet to show his address. Cop 1, eyeing his license. Sir, this address is for down the street. Me. Correct. But if you look at Google Maps, it shows the property boundaries of the address reach through the woods and end at this wall. I hand him my phone, which already had Google Maps open, showing the exact location within the boundary of the property. Cop number 2. Yep, she's right. So what were you doing out here, if you don't mind me asking? We explain the situation with the tree and how we are working to remove the remnants. Meanwhile, the other officer was taking a statement from entitled mom. Grandfather. I know the owner of this house and he's a good guy. I gave him permission to dump his leaves and stuff behind the wall, but I've never seen her before, so I don't know where she got those crazy ideas. But I'm definitely going to have a talk with Frank when he gets home. Cop 1. She's already called him up, and he's on his way. Do you mind sticking around for a little while until he gets here? Grandfather. Sure, we got nothing to do. The cops walked us back to my grandfather's truck, where we waited about 10 minutes for Frank to pull up. When he did, he immediately walked over to the truck. Frank. Grandfather's first name. OP. What's going on? Someone hiding out in the woods? Are you okay? Did you see him? To clarify, we have had issues in the past with people running from the cops and hiding in the woods. It took a second for us to realize he thought maybe EM saw one and we came out to chase him out. Me. Not exactly. At this point, the two cops are around us again, but being two old guys who obviously pose zero threat, they're noticeably relaxed and kind of let them talk it out. Frank explains that EM is his granddaughter's mother and his son has had some mistakes and currently both were staying with him while they tried to find a place to live on their own. He thinks maybe his son told some lies to make him look better. Grandfather. Well, I hate to say it, but your son made a big mistake. She's crazy. Frank. Oh, you have no idea. The other cop is still talking to EM, who won't stop screaming about not wanting us being able to see into the living room, especially my grandfather, a creepy old man. My blood is boiling at this point. My grandpa is the type of person who would gladly throw his life away to save a child. Any child. Even a stranger. Frank heard this too and ordered EM inside at once. He told the cops he needed to have a talk with both her and his son about their living situation, but they might want to remain nearby in case she tries to call again for whatever reason. My grandfather and I were given the all clear to go, but leave our contact information. Found out later that week that EM was getting evicted for a number of reasons, with this little incident being the last straw. He's also filing for custody of his granddaughter because EM refuses to get a job, yet still has money for weed, and yet keeps asking Frank for money to take care of his granddaughter. I feel really bad for her in this situation, but I have no sympathy for EM whatsoever. Entitlement at its best. Anyway, that's all the stories I have for today. Links to the original stories will be in the description box below. Please stop on by Reddit to show the OP some love and an upvote. If you enjoy my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share my videos. It really helps in the YouTube algorithm. Don't forget to hit the bell notification to let you know when I've uploaded new content. Thank you for watching and have a great day.